I rise to talk to the Table of Public Accounts and Audit Committee inquiry into the major projects report, which I had the privilege of serving on the committee for the duration of. And the government likes to talk about their commitment to defence. In fact, they brag about it. Normally at the end of question time, they throw a bone to the Minister for Home Affairs, Peter Dutton, and they let him talk about defence for 3 minutes, as a way of reminding people he's still supposedly relevant. And his entire dixer can be reduced to one sentence. We're going to spend more than 2% of GDP on defence, therefore we're strong on defence. That is literally the entire dixer is. We're spending 2% of GDP on defence, therefore you can trust us on defence. They hold up this 2% commitment as some sort of magical talisman to hide the fact that their performance on defence is woeful. And Madam Deputy Speaker, it has always been woeful. They have a history of hopeless performance on defence, from Prime Minister Menzies advocating for appeasement 10 days after Hitler invaded Poland, not a couple of years beforehand. 10 days after Hitler invaded Poland, Menzies was advocating for appeasement. Or the fact that they took us into Vietnam based on a lie that cost 500 Australians their lives. Or the fact they took us into the Second Iraq War based on another lie. The coalition cannot be trusted on defence. And I'm sad to say that this report goes to this as well, because this report is all about the failures of this government to manage the defence acquisition portfolio. And they talk about spending, but the fact is, Madam Deputy Speaker, since 2016, this government has spent $6.7 billion less than they promised they would on the acquisition of new defence capital. Let me repeat that. The defence capital budget has been underspent by $6.7 billion since 2016 under this government. They literally cannot spend the money effectively or appropriately. And conversely, so that means, Madam Deputy Speaker, that our troops, the ADF, is not getting the equipment they've been promised, in fact the equipment they've been budgeted for. And what's the inverse of this? It means we're running our existing equipment longer and harder than we need to or that we plan to. So we've seen a $4.2 billion blowout in the defence sustainment budget during the same period, a $4.2 billion blowout in defence sustainment. And at the same time as we're spending an extra $4.2 billion than we're budgeted for, we're actually getting significant underperformance in the availability of our platforms. So, for example, naval fleet vessels are available for 14% fewer days than planned for. RAF aircraft are available for 21% fewer hours than budgeted for, and helicopters across the entire ADF are available for 26% fewer hours than budgeted for. So this government has managed the quinella. They're spending more. They're spending $4.2 billion more on sustainment, but they're delivering a lot less availability than our ADF needs. And when you come to individual projects, acquisition projects that are canvassed in the major projects report and the quarterly performance review and every other effective oversight that this parliament has, this government's performance is woeful. On submarines, for example, we've got a $39.7 billion blowout in the cost of the submarines. The then Prime Minister Abbott, we've had a couple since him, but Prime Minister Abbott got up in the middle of 2015 and committed to 12 new regionally superior submarines for an outturned cost of $50 billion, outturned, i.e. In then dollars of expenditure, not constant dollars. Now what is the cost of those 12 regionally superior submarines? $89.7 billion, a blowout of $39.7 billion. And what about the timing of this? Prime Minister Abbott said that these submarines will be available in the mid-2020s. They're now at best going to be available, begin to be available in the mid-2030s. So a $39.7 billion blowout, a 10-year blowout in the schedule. And the flow-on from this is now we're going to have to, as the member for Solomon so eloquently talked about, we're now going to have to extend the life of the Collins-class submarines. Great submarines, but we're running them for a lot longer than we planned. Therefore, this government is now planning a life of type extension for those submarines that will cost at least $3.5 billion, at least $3.5 billion. What's the second largest defence acquisition this government is managing? The future frigates, the Hunter class. Well, they're in their early stages, but we've already seen a $15 billion blowout in them. So they were promised to be acquired for $30 billion. Now they slipped in a price update to $45 billion. So an increase in the cost of these submarines by $15 billion, 50% of the project cost. And they haven't even begun cutting steel yet, Madam Deputy Speaker. So this is all in the design phase. And we're seeing major problems with that. We're seeing challenges around weight issues, the fact that these frigates are blowing out in their weight, which will affect their performance and their cost. What's another large project this government has mismanaged? The air warfare destroyers, which were delivered 40 months late. 40 months late, Madam Deputy Speaker. A project that was supposed to be reasonably off the shelf. They chose the Navantia F100 model compared to a cut-down Arleigh Burke because it was off the shelf. We're just going to copy what the Spanish had done. Well, they managed to still deliver it 40 months late. And they've delivered it with final operational capability without a key capability. So they've delivered and declared full service, but the AWDs won't have radar electronic attack, which is a key capability that the Navy needs. My particular favourite, and there's a range of favourites, is the C-27 Spartans, the battlefield airlift aircraft that replaced the mighty Caribou. This is a $1.5 billion project that we found out through these hearings that can't fly into battlefields. Let me repeat that, Madam Deputy Speaker. We're spending $1.5 billion on a battlefield airlift aircraft that cannot be flown into battlefields. One would submit that's a tiny problem, Madam Deputy Speaker. And they're being delivered without this key capability at least 3 years late. This is a government that is hopeless on defence. And the Joint Strike Fighter is another case where the government slipped in through these hearings. We established the truth. They tried to hide a $1.5 billion cost blowout. Through these hearings, the committee established that we're spending $16.5 billion on these aircraft, but we're only getting $15 billion worth of capability because two critical capabilities, maritime strike and a beyond line of sight communications, aren't there properly. They're just not there. So we sign up to a contract that says you're going to get all these capabilities for $16.5 billion, but now we're only going to get $15 billion worth of aircraft.